This screencast is to support this lesson on subject and object questions on the topic of describing routines. It's from Language to Go Intermediate, published by Longman, and it's lesson 2. It's a nice lesson that incorporates some vocabulary connected with sleep and then goes on to a reading which introduces the target language of subject and object questions with some controlled and freer practice to follow. So as a lead in, the book suggests this question 1, what is your favourite or least favourite part of the day and why? You might want to introduce this with a picture of someone looking very tired in the morning or really happy at a disco or something like that in the evening. Something to get ideas going and get them thinking about different parts of the day and then personalising it to discussion about their preferences. And then once you've established that, you can move on to the vocabulary, which are some phrases connected with sleep. So you've got the phrases on the left, 10 phrases, a morning person, stay up late, etc. And they simply have to match them with the definition on the right. Do an example together to get them started and check that they understand the task with some ICQs if necessary, and then let them do the rest. Don't forget to allow them to peer check before you get the answers and make sure that they can see the answers during feedback. You might want to concept check a few of these, which are perhaps more challenging. For example, I think it would be worth checking that they understand the difference between oversleep and have a lie-in. What concept checking questions could you ask them to make sure they understand the difference between those two phrases? What would be the opposite of a morning person, for example? And I doubt they will have heard of to be an early riser. So these are all useful and worth checking the meaning of, and also, of course, doing some drilling of any of the trickier phrases. As a little bit of practice in using these phrases, exercise 3 asks the students to describe the people in the 3 pictures on the left using some of these new phrases from exercise 2. So that's quite a nice activity. So all in all, that vocabulary activity is really useful. However, if you're doing an hour lesson, you're not going to have time to do all 10 phrases. So you might want to take out a few and make the activity shorter. Think about which ones they'll know. So intermediate level and above, they should know already: stay up late, wake up, fall asleep, for example. Not to be able to keep your eyes open is quite a literal phrase, which they should know already. So you could miss those out in order to reduce the amount of time spent on that activity. Next, the students need to do the reading, which gives the context for the subject and object questions, which is our target language. It's definitely worth pre-teaching some of the tricky vocabulary. I would check the students' understanding of grunt, glance, and blush in this instance. These could be elicited from the students from pictures and prepare some CCQs to make sure they've really understood the concepts. Drill any of the trickier ones that are difficult to say. Now they're going to read for gist and do exercise 4. Exercise 4 says read the text and say which of the pictures are described. So they read the text quickly and match with either A, B or C. This shouldn't take long. They can do a quick peer check at the end and then get the answer from a student and make sure that they can see the answer on a slide. Now we can move on to exercise 5, which is a more detailed understanding of the text. So the students need to read the text again and answer the 6 questions. Number 1, what did Vic have for breakfast, can be done as an example. Get the students to find the answer, quick peer check, feedback, show them the answer, and then allow them to do 2 to 6. Again, peer check and feedback with visible answers. You'll notice that all of these questions contain the target language, subject and object questions. This leads nicely onto the grammar focus. So in exercise 6, you can see it says, look at the examples and underline the correct alternatives in sentences 1 to 4. So as usual, in many course books, they put the grammar in a box like this. They've taken 2 examples of the target language from the questions about the reading. So A says subject questions, who speaks to Vic? Answer, Marjorie speaks to Vic. B, object questions, who does Vic speak to? Answer, he speaks to Marjorie. The students look at this information in the box and then answer the 4 questions below. Put this on a slide so that they can discuss the questions together and decide on the answers. Okay, so they have to underline the correct answer. Once you've checked that they're sure what they need to do, they can get on and do it. You can listen and monitor and then get some answers. These can all be found, of course, in the teacher's notes. The questions check that the students have understood the meaning and the form of the questions. And so now they can move on to exercise 7, where they go back to the questions from the reading in exercise 5, and they answer these 2 questions in exercise 7. Which auxiliary verbs are used? Okay, and then number 2, which are subject questions and which are object questions? So they could put an S or an O next to each question, depending on whether it's a subject or an object question, based on the rules that they've just worked out in exercise 6. Again, it's a good idea to get the students talking together and discussing their thoughts on this, to share knowledge and to build confidence. Once they've got the answers, get some feedback. Check anything that they're still not clear about. Now we can focus on pronunciation. So I think these questions from exercise 5 from the reading, again, are useful to use for our pronunciation. So taking their attention away from the written form, drill these sentences. Okay, so what did Vic have for breakfast? What did Vic have for breakfast? Get them to repeat. Listen out. Where's the sentence stress? What did Vic have for breakfast? Vic and breakfast, etc. Okay. What does Marjorie think about smoking? What does Marjorie think about smoking? Note the weak does there. It almost disappears. What does Marjorie think about smoking? So some nice work on pronunciation to get them feeling confident with the language. Now they can do some controlled practice. This activity works well. They look at the prompts and they write the questions. So on the left they have the prompts, on the right they have the answer to guide them as to whether to make a subject or an object question. So the example says got up first and the answer is Vic. So the question is who got up first? And yeah, they can do that on their own, or you can get them to work together and work out the answers as a group. If they have done it individually, they'll need to peer check, of course, and then you can get some answers back and make sure they can see those answers. If they've made any mistakes, use this opportunity, the feedback to the control practice, to recheck the rules that they've gone over earlier about subject and object questions. Now it's time for some freer speaking practice. The book suggests in exercise 9 doing a survey to find the morning people in your class. Part 1 of the activity is to write the questions. So the students have 8 questions. Again, if you're running short of time, you might want to reduce the number of questions that you're asking them to complete. They're given prompts and they write the full question first of all. The alternative to this is that they don't write the full question, but they simply think about the answers. So, for example, number 2, I could look at it and say, what time get up? Okay, so that means what time do I get up? And I'm going to make some notes. I'm going to make some notes on the right. So I get up at 7 o'clock. Just put 7 o'clock. Okay. What day have a lie-in? So that means what day do I have a lie-in? Okay, my notes, I'm just going to write Saturday. Okay, so just a few minutes. That shortens the activity because it means that the students aren't writing out all the questions. And then they can talk together and ask the questions. So they're just reading the questions from the prompts, and the students use their notes to answer the questions. So you can do this in breakout rooms, or you can have them doing this as a whole group. Monitor this closely and listen to how they're using the subject and object questions and the vocabulary, and make some notes for some post-fluency correction later. Once they've all had the opportunity to speak and ask and answer questions, you can get some general feedback. So, for example, Biao has a lie-in on a Saturday, or Yolanda finds it hard to keep her eyes open after 9 o'clock. Then you can do some post-fluency error correction. So tell the students that you heard some great examples of subject and object questions, and that you heard a few that contain mistakes. Show them a slide or a Word document with examples that you heard, and get them together to identify the errors and to correct them. This is a useful lesson for the students. Just think carefully about how to adapt the activities if you need to for a 60-minute lesson.